all competitions.
Will he score this for Casey? Will he score? It's a shot! It's a goal!
And it's a shot, and it's a goal! And Casey has won the Manning Cup, and they will play Clarendon College in the Olivia Shield. And that's what you love to see. They may be rivals, but the camaraderie is what it's all about. Can't wait for the final.
When the bus the man, I want to watch my son play finals on CVM, you know.
But mums, you can't watch it on CVM website, man.
Score! My son score! My son score! My son score! My son score!
Greatness begins here.
I'm Curlin Brown. Let's continue to inspire Jamaica. And of course, where else will you see it? CVM TV, of course.
Thanks for joining us for CVM News at noon for this Monday, August 25, 2025. I'm Amoy Harriet. Up first this afternoon, tensions ran high in Mount James St. Andrews Sunday after a day of bloodshed left 2 men dead in what police believe was a murder followed by vigilante justice. Residents were left in shock after community chef Gregory Tripe Henry was chopped to death around mid-morning on Water Lane. But not long after, residents turned their anger on the man accused of carrying out the attack. He was later found dead in a stream nearby. Now, his identity has not yet been confirmed. Investigators from the Constant Spring Criminal Investigation Branch are probing the incident. Now, Election Day workers, along with members of the police and military forces, will cast their ballots this Friday, August 29. The Electoral Office of Jamaica says it has completed preparations for the more than 45,000 special services electors. A total of 215 locations across the island have been designated, including schools, churches, police stations, community centers, and military bases. Now, of the electors, over 12,000 are police officers, 5,000 are members of the military, and more than 27,000 are Election Day workers. Under the law, special services electors must vote early to be available for duty on General Election Day, September 3. The EOJ notes that anyone who misses the August 29 vote will not be able to cast a ballot on September 3, as their names have been removed from the civilian voters list. Now, ballots cast on August 29 will be secured and counted with the rest of the votes on Election Day. Jamaicans from the deaf community were left on the sidelines Saturday night when the first national election debate got underway without a sign language interpreter. Disability advocates warn this oversight disregards the voices and the rights of roughly 15% of citizens living with hearing loss. More from Nika Lewis.
Unfortunately, due to circumstances beyond our control, there will be no interpretation for the deaf and hearing impaired.
Jamaicans from the deaf community were without the expected guiding hands Saturday night as the first of 3 national debates got underway ahead of the general elections. But despite the declaration of situations beyond their control, the absence of a signing expert didn't sit well with some advocates in the disabilities community. Zante Thomas, founder and executive director of Sign Clubs of Jamaica, shared concerns.
It's clear that there were some, behind-the-scenes issues. However, despite all the issues that would have occurred, we know one thing for sure, that thousands of deaf Jamaicans weren't able to watch the debates, unfortunately. And as a youth association geared towards advocating for the deaf, we thought that it was pertinent that we shared our views on the situation, especially because many Jamaicans, both deaf and hard of hearing and hearing, felt that the explanation given wasn't sufficient. Generally speaking, it's essential to hire qualified interpreters with knowledge of specific jargons for the context and situation. Not every interpreter is qualified for context like these.
She's urging Jamaicans to pay attention to the needs of the differently abled community. Thomas was not alone. Jamaica's first blind parliamentarian, Professor Floyd Morris, who also heads the Center for Disabilities at the UWI-MONA, says it was unfortunate and should not happen in future. He reminds that some 15% of the population are members of the special needs community and ought to be considered not just for their vote, but their interest.
I don't know if they had triggered the closed captioning on the television screens, because that could have assisted in the process as well, so that, if they are not able to understand what is taking place via signing, they would be able to see the writing and get an indication as to what is being said. So it is very unfortunate, and I am calling upon the National Debating Commission to make sure that they remedy the problem forthwith for the remainder of the debates.
The Jamaica Debates Commission apologized for the absence and promised to have a sign language interpreter for the remaining 2 debates on the economy set for August 26 and the leadership debate set for August 28. Nika Lewis, CVM News.
Now, tax break is a hot commodity on the campaign trail, with both major political parties dangling relief before voters. The Jamaica Labour Party, JLP, in its recently published 110-page manifesto, has promised to reduce income tax to 15% of annual earnings on a phased basis if it continues in government. JLP leader Dr. Andrew Holness spoke further on the promise at the party's mass rally in St. James Sunday evening.
We were the party that delivered $1.5 million in the income tax threshold when the PNP said it couldn't be done. We have raised it to 1.7 million, and we will increase it to 2 million over the next 2 years so that your take-home pay continues to rise.
In the meantime, JLP leader Dr. Andrew Holness has promised further relief on National Housing Trust loans for public sector workers. Dr. Holness says his administration remains committed to easing the burden on working Jamaicans. He further revealed that additional interest rate reductions will be made to NHT loans for public sector employees after years of service, making home ownership more affordable.
And we will launch a 1 in 5 and a 2 in 10 program so that teachers and nurses and members of the security forces working in the public sector can receive a 1% mortgage interest reduction after 5 years and 2% interest reduction after 10 years. That is on top of the already low interest rates that the NHD gives.
The Jamaica Constabulary Force is reaching out to troubled youths in St. Elizabeth through a special empowerment camp. The initiative, developed in partnership with the JCF and another organization, aims to provide guidance and new opportunities for young people in the parish. Zog Grant has the details.
Director of M&M Jamaica Limited, Donnie Mullins-Makosa, explained that the camp was introduced to their team as part of the police's outreach efforts to help troubled youths in the parish.
It was proposed to us as an opportunity for outreach to at-risk youth in the St. Elizabeth area, with the underlying principle being that positive intervention would be more successful than the punitive measures that already existed.
Among the participants is Travis Logg, who shared that the camp was an eye-opener for him.
The camp's been something new for me. It's better than just sitting around at home all day doing nothing. And I met some new people that were cool.
Meanwhile, Corporal Karen Austin, who is attached to the St. Elizabeth Police Division, noted the camp's turnout included participants beyond the targeted age group.
It started on Monday, the 14th, the 11th, and we will go on until the 14th. We targeted children persons between the ages of 11 and 22. However, we ended up with younger children, so we did not turn anyone away, and as such, we have 118 campers who are participating in the camp.
Now, in Manchester, during the same time while the JLP was having their mass rally, the PNP was hosting a mass rally of its own. PNP President Mark Golding announced that if elected to government, his administration will also be offering a tax relief, allowing persons earning up to $3.5 million annually to pay 0% income. And we'll hear from Mr. Golding.
And we won't stop there. Because as the economy improves and the fiscal space improves, we will raise that tax threshold further and further, because we want money to be in the pockets of those who are struggling right now to make ends meet. So now I hear the Labourites are talking about adjusting the rate of income tax, but that is going to benefit those who are very, very wealthy more than it will benefit those who are less wealthy. Because the rate, once reduced for them, means that they will be paying less tax because they're earning more to begin with.
Now we'll break down these announcements a little further during our live segment, which comes up right after this break. So stay with us.
Getting the keys to your own home is a feeling many cannot describe. It's a moment we all hope for, and a dream that all Jamaicans have. The new social housing program is the difference between a dream and reality. The government, through the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, is building hope, one home at a time.
Jamaica College in Kingston on August 31. Come enjoy the baddest pan chicken from across the island. Enjoy live performances by Kevin Downswell, Leela Ike, Wade Marshall, Giomar Mitchell, and Ashley. Hosted by yours truly, the Queen Diva, Miss Kitty, Justin Duffy Shepherd, and Dandra. Bringing good vibes all day. Admission free. Gates open at 12 noon. Bring your whole family. Who will be crowned the 2025 pan, pork, and chicken champion? Hello. See you on August 31 at Jamaica College.
Welcome back to CVM News at noon. Right now we're joined by economist Keenan Faulkner, who will be providing some analysis of the income tax breaks that have been proposed by each political party, or that's the two major political parties, in the run-up to the September 3 general elections. Welcome, Mr. Faulkner.
Hi, Amoy. Thanks so much for having me.
So both the JLP and PNP presented tax breaks if they form the next government. Could you briefly break down each of them for our viewers?
Well, so the PNP would have proposed an increase in the threshold to $3.5 million, and the Jamaica Labour Party would have proposed a reduction in the income tax rate from 25% to 15%. Now, each of those carries with it a certain trade-off. The PNP's proposal is likely to benefit more lower income earners, of course, being at the lower end of the scale between the revised threshold of 1.8 million and the 3.5 million, whereas the JLP's proposal is likely now to benefit all current PAYE earners to the extent that it is able to. So, you know, in trying to decide where the trade-off lies, you are benefiting a certain segment of the populace that pays income tax, which is estimated to be around 400,000 people who currently do pay income tax. But do you want now to have some of those persons not paying income tax, whereas everybody else will now pay less? Or do you now want everybody to pay less? So each of them carries with it a different trade-off.
So how feasible, though, are the proposed measures?
Well, I don't anticipate that they can be implemented within the next 2 years. We are projected to run a fiscal deficit of around $33 to $35 billion, or around 1% of GDP in the next 2 fiscal years. So the phased implementation of either of them, I think, will have to start at least from fiscal year 2027, 2028, and possibly be concluded by the end of the next parliamentary term or early into the following term after that. So it is likely to be of the magnitude of billions, tens of billions of dollars, at least $20 billion on each side. So once those calculations are finalized, that is not something I expect that either a PNP or JLP government can accommodate in a single year or even 2 years. So the fiscal envelope now, I think, needs to be recalibrated to see how best those can be absorbed, because each of them has proposed that they want to now remove other taxes like asset tax and reduce taxes elsewhere. So now, if you don't want to impose new taxes and both parties have signaled that they don't want to do that, then they will now have to try to reprioritize expenditure in other areas.
So against that backdrop, could you describe the phased implementation that they've proposed?
So the Jamaica Labour Party's phased implementation will, I anticipate, take a couple of fiscal years to do, but the risk of that one is mitigated by the fact that there is a proposal simultaneously to now expand the tax base, which I think the conversation needs to go, because at the end of the day, you have a very small proportion of earners relative to the rest of the labor force that is paying income tax at all. So how do you now plan to engage in economic diversification, industrial expansion, and things like that, so you can broaden that tax base? Most of us, we would all like to pay fewer taxes, but right now, as it is, 20% of those people who are working are carrying the burden for the other 80%, and that at the moment is not really equitable.
So in addition to this, what other factors should we be considering?
Well, we need to know what exactly is the fiscal space that we can afford. And given recently the news that our debt to GDP ratio will actually be attained much sooner than we had anticipated, then that potentially possibly opens up some amount of fiscal space in order to accommodate this additional absorption of revenue. But we're not quite sure what that might look like. 5% anticipated when the debt to GDP ratio declined from 63% to 62% can afford you potentially an additional $200 billion, depending on the priorities and the needs of expenditure for the government. So it is all now to see how that can be recalibrated over the next couple of years to see if we can sustainably afford this in the medium term.
Mr. Fawn, it's election time now. It's the campaigning period. So both parties are going to be proposing things that they know will catch the attention of voters. What questions should us as voters ask ourselves when we hear these kinds of promises?
I think we need to first figure out, the benefit that accrues to me, is that marginal, or is it likely to be significant depending on where I fall in the different income segments in the labor force. So in addition to that, whether I benefit personally, we now need to know, is this really sustainable fiscally going forward? Because there will have to be a trade-off. If the parties do not want to impose taxes, and I'm sure members of the electorate don't really want to hear that in order to fund this, then what other potential areas will get cut? Or are you willing now as a government to run a larger fiscal deficit than you had initially programmed? So these trade-offs, when we decide to forego this revenue, will that necessarily lead to some productive benefit where we can offset that cost through increased productivity? Those, I think, are some of the major considerations that we have to assess before we can really conclude and make a final decision on your voting choice.
All right, and on that note, I know you'll be listening keenly to the second debate on economy, which, by the way, will be live on CVM TV on Tuesday at 9 p.m. Mr. Faulkner, what are your expectations of that debate, and what in particular do you hope will be addressed?
So I think both parties now need to devise a plan that speaks almost exclusively to inclusive and sustainable growth, economic diversification, industrial expansion. We have achieved and embedded macroeconomic stability to the point where we have been able as a country to reap some of those dividends. But in order for us to continue to do that, we need to know what the plan is